If you're a beginner in the gym or you've been going for a while and you're on a relatively skinnier side and you're wanting to make that classic skinny to muscular transformation that you've seen thousands do online, but you're spinning your wheels and you're in the same situation whilst you're seeing others transcend past you, or you're feeling lost, or you're feeling confused on what to do, or you've been trying to do things but they just seem to not be working and it seems impossible to be gaining weight and muscle, well, then you are in the right place, my friend, because this is going to be the last bulking and muscle gain guide that you will need to watch before you actually have an idea of what to do and you actually have a direction and you will know exactly what is going to take you from your position now where you're spinning your wheels to actually making the progress you want to and making the changes that you desire. I'm going to walk you through step by step every single thing you need to know in the simplest form possible to bulk and gain muscle. Proof that I know my onions a little bit. My name is Ryan, I'm 20 years old, and over the past 4.5 years, this has been my transformation, gaining over 27 kilos in total. I've benched 140 kilos at almost half of my body weight, so I've achieved some decent feats, and now it's my turn to help you achieve some decent feats as well. So, step one of actually making the successful bulk and muscle gain transformation that you desire is actually understanding the pillars that drive that transformation, right? Why would you start a business without understanding the model and understanding everything you need to do every day? You know, it doesn't necessarily make sense. If you understand cars, but you want to make a business on pianos and you have no idea what, and you have no knowledge on pianos, right? Then what is the point? You need to actually understand the foundations and the pillars that will get you to where you want to go in the simplest form possible, right? So truly, if we break down weight gain and muscle growth, all it is three pillars, right? I see so many people online overcomplicating this stuff, and to be honest, I don't necessarily blame you if you overcomplicate this really simple process, because nowadays on the internet we are so we are very privileged to have so much information on muscle growth and bulking, etc., right? And when someone overconsumes information, for example, if you watch loads of these guides, but you know, you won't need to after this, it can all become a bit overwhelming for you. You know, when you hear information from multiple sources and someone over here is telling you something completely different to this person over here, it can really get your mind wound up, which can really make things complicated. But if we're being really, you know, if we're breaking it down to in its simplest form, muscle growth is just three pillars, which are training, diet, and recovery, right? If you train properly, which I'm going to go over, and if you eat properly, and if you recover well, muscle growth will be inevitable, right? Because they are the three things that force muscle growth. If you do those things properly, then you are going to force yourself to grow. There is no other option, right? And that is what we want to do here. We want to do everything so well to the point where we force our body to grow and we give it no choice but to achieve that dream physique we want, okay? And the reason I'm going over these right now is A, as I said, so you can actually understand, because without a basic understanding of what drives muscle growth and drives your dream physique, then you're going to struggle a lot. And B, because those three pillars is what this video is mainly formed upon. I'm going to go through these three pillars and make everything as easy and as simple as possible. But before we do go into these three pillars and make everything seem so easy for you, there is a couple of more things we have to do first. And that one thing that we need to do, if you're asking, is we need to acknowledge our starting point. So we need to become aware of our current situation right now, so we know exactly what we personally need to do in order to make progress. Because one thing that you need to understand right now is that what someone may need to do in order to progress may differentiate a bit from what you need to do. And that is because bodybuilding is an individual game, right? Different things, for example, different calorie requirements, different diets, different meals, different exercises, different workout programs work best for different people. Now, I don't want that to confuse you, because the only thing that you need to understand here is that everyone operates differently, right? I look different to you. I have a different background to you. I have different parents to you. I went to a different school to you. I'm going to do a different career to you, right? Everyone is different, and that is what you need to apply to this, because you may see people online saying, oh, this is the best split of 2025, or this is the best diet of 2025. The reason they're saying it's the best, they may have some scientific evidence. However, a lot of the time, they're saying it's the best because it's worked for them, right? So what you'll find a lot in the gym is that when someone says something is the best, it's because it's worked subjectively well for them, right? So in order to actually find out what we need to do, we need to actually acknowledge our starting point. Now, not only do we need to acknowledge our starting point for the reasons I just said, such as actually knowing what we need to do going forward, but to also give us sort of a frame and an accurate way of perceiving where we are right now in our current situation. Okay, because understanding our current situation is what is going to give us that fuel. It's going to give us that drive and that motivation, and it's going to remind us of why we want to change. Because ultimately, you are in this situation right now because you want to change. And if a human wants to change, that means that they are relatively unhappy in some way with their current situation. Whether you're feeling unconfident with, you know, taking your top off on the beach or in front of friends, or whether you want bigger arms and you feel really insecure that they're just dangling out your t-shirt, for example. There is a reason why you want to change. Now, we can dive into why, and I can do that in another video, because, you know, we don't necessarily need to do that. All this video is doing is touching the surface of all the essentials that you need to know, which is going to get you to where you want to go in the most efficient way possible. However, the one thing that we need to do right now is to just remind ourselves of our current situation. So whenever we feel like we're going off track, or whenever we feel like we lose motivation, or whether we start to feel doubt creeping in, we can remind ourselves of where we started, right? And why, and what that person wanted for our future selves, right? For example, there are going to be days where you don't feel like going to the gym. There are going to be days where you don't feel like training legs or eating that final meal in order to eat in a calorie surplus. However, if you do the following things, and if you become aware of your current situation, regardless whether you feel doubt and you really feel resistance or procrastination to doing something, the fact that you are well aware of why you want to change and who that person is, and doing it for that person in the first place, that is going to be a lot more powerful than any resistance or doubt or fear that you may feel on this journey. Okay, so 3 things that we want to do in particular in order to acknowledge our starting point is set a goal, take progress pictures, and track our initial scale weight. Okay, so let's start with the first one.
So I'm currently editing this video, and for some reason I just completely skipped past goal setting and went straight to progress photos. So I'm going to have to refilm, or just film, because I didn't film it in the first place, about goal setting. So the reason why goal setting is super important is because we need direction, right? Obviously, we have direction in the sense that we know what we want to do through the gym, which is good. We know that we need to bulk and we need to gain muscle, so we can identify a clear plan. However, we need to set ourselves goals, so in those times where we go through adversity, where we hit obstacles, roadblocks and bottlenecks, you know, where things are going to get hard, like as I said previously, when you don't necessarily feel like eating that final meal, or when you've got to do a leg day. It's funny because as I'm filming this, I'm training legs later, but I'm very excited for it. But there are times where I do not want to train legs, right? However, because I have goals, for example, in the next few years, I have the vision of competing and hopefully winning my first ever bodybuilding competition, right? That keeps me going. That gets me down to the gym, and that is what makes me push hard, eat the meals when I need to eat them. So I eventually, you know, I force myself to grow, right? So goals are basically mechanisms that will help us escape our current situation, because they get us through the tough times. You know, if we have a goal, we have a reminder of what we're doing this for. And as an old quote says, he who has a why can bear almost any how. That basically means if you have a reason, or in this case a goal behind doing something, or in this case going to the gym and bulking and gaining muscle, then you know you're going to get through any adversity. And having that goal and having that why behind your doing it, the power of that outweighs any adversity you will face. So what I want you to do right now is get a bit of paper and spend around a good 20 to 30 minutes, right? Or it could even be longer. It could be an hour, right? You don't want to rush this. You want to set yourself goals, and I would recommend anywhere from 3 to 5 goals. They are, because you don't want to have too many, because then, you know, they won't be as meaningful, but you don't want to have too little because you want things to achieve, right? You know, I have more goals than just, you know, winning a bodybuilding competition in terms of the gym, for example. I've got a list of goals that I want to achieve in terms of the gym. So I recommend writing out around 3 to 5 goals. And remember, take your time. Do not rush this, right? Spend anywhere from 20 to even an hour as long as you need to get your goals that mean enough to you, right? Because if you don't write goals down that are profound to you, for example, do not write what I've just said to you about me winning a bodybuilding competition. That is deep to me, but that will not be deep to you. Therefore, the why, or in this sense your goal, won't outweigh the power of adversity you will face, right? Making sure you have goals that mean a lot to you and that are deep to you. You want these goals to be fucking deep, alright? So, you know, just have a good think about it, set yourself some goals, and then you can move on to step number 2.
Progress pictures. Progress pictures are really important, so not only can we see our progress visually, but they're also a source of motivation as well, right? You've got to think about it like this. In 6 months' time, or in a year, or in 5 or 10 years' time, by the time you want to achieve that peak, final boss physique, right? Do you want to be looking the same, or do you want to be looking even worse? Obviously not. You don't want to be looking skinny, right? You want to keep making changes. You want to see changes. So, for example, when I get you to take certain progress photos in a second, you want to look at these and think, right, when I put these aside, the ones I'm going to take in 6 months' time, or a year's time, or 5 years' time, I want a difference to be day and night, and when I'm looking at these pictures, I want to see two completely different fucking people, okay? You want these progress photos to be like, right, I have no choice to change because I don't want to look like this anymore, okay? So it's more than just assessing your visual progression, it's psychological motivation as well. So what I want you to do right now is take 3 different types of progress pictures to kick your bulking journey and muscle gain journey off to a flying start, right? And now if you've been in the gym for a while but you're not making progress, the reason I say the start is because that shit doesn't count, right? You are now on day 0 because this is when you're going to do it properly from now on, okay? Not your stuff that wasn't working, you're going to be doing stuff proper, okay? So the first progress photo that I want you to take is relaxed progress photos. So I'm going to put loads on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Relaxed progress photos basically just consist of you setting the camera up in, you know, good lighting in the gym or good lighting in your house. You can either set your phone up on the ledge or get someone to take pictures of you, and you basically just want to stand still, right? No tensing, just your physique in its pure still form, right? You want to take one from the front like this. You want to take one from the side, and then you want to go around to the back so you can see your back just like this. Oh no, sorry, my microphone won't allow me to do that. But you get the point. You just want to basically take relaxed photos of you not tensing from all angles. So from your front to your side to your back to your side and back to the front, okay? And I'd highly recommend taking these once every month, and in order to make it easy to stay consistent with this, I'll just mark it on your calendar on the first day of every month. So, you know, it's just so much easier to do, you know. First of the month, oh, I've got to take my relaxed progress pictures. It takes you 2 minutes, and just having it on the first makes it just so much simpler, okay? So they are the first progress pictures that I would like you to take, okay? The second type of progress picture I want you to take is mirror photos, okay? There is no specific time you've got to do this. There is no specific way you've got to do this. You could just do it whenever you want, right? Whenever you feel like you're walking past a mirror and you're looking good, or in your bathroom and you feel like you're looking good, or after your gym session and you've got a crazy chest or leg or back pump and you want to get it on photo, then take a photo, okay? I've got so many I can't even fit them on the screen. I've got hundreds, and I've also deleted hundreds, so I've probably got thousands overall, which is pretty sad, but you know, you get the idea. Just take it whenever you feel like you're looking good, and they are also a really good representation of your progress over time, right? And if you've got a girl you want to impress, then make it a profile picture or something, mate, okay? So that's progress picture number 2. Now moving on to the final one, progress picture number 3 is just posing, right? And you know, this is the best way to, you know, see your physique, and if you keep these poses consistent over time, you're going to be able to see your progress in a really good way, okay? So to be honest with you, it takes time to actually get good at the poses. I do a sad amount of posing probably every day, literally subconsciously. Whenever I go into my bathroom, I just end up hitting a little pose when I see myself in a mirror. So I've been doing this for over 4.5 years. So that's why the poses you can see on the screen are probably looking pretty good. And yours may not look like that, and mine certainly didn't when I started. So don't worry, these things take time and practice. But so the first pose I want you to hit is a front double bicep. So it basically just consists of when you tense your biceps like this and you bring your back out so you can see your lats coming up here. That's the first pose. The second pose is a back double bicep. So you basically just want to do what you did here, but you want to take a picture of your back. So instead of your front, you want to have the phone behind you and do this pose. The third one is the most muscular pose. So you just want to tense as hard as possible like that. Clench your hands together so you can get your chest tensed as well. And the final one is your abs and thighs pose. Okay, so you just want to put your hands behind your back, tense your abs like this, and you also want to get your legs out in every single one of these poses. I was really I didn't get my legs out in any of the photos that I took when I first started, and reason being is because I skipped them for probably around a year. So I wouldn't recommend doing that, and to hold yourself fully accountable to train legs, because a lot of people don't like to do it, I would highly recommend that you get them in the photos, because as I said, when you take a progress photo, from that moment on, you do not want to look the same in the future. You want to make the difference day and night when you compare them in 6 months, okay? So that's the first thing about acknowledging our starting point. The second thing that I would highly recommend that you do, actually no, that's the second thing, sorry. The third and final thing that I want you to do before we can move on to step number one is acquire your very first scale weight, okay? As we are bulking and as we are trying to gain weight and gain muscle, it's absolutely essential we track our weight, and we need to get this number so we can do the next step, okay? So before we actually carry on to the next step, I want you to do all of those three. So I want you to set a goal, I want you to take your progress photos, and I want you to track your first scale weight, right? And if you don't have a scale, do not worry, just go on Amazon and there's loads for like $10, they're really cheap. You can get it, obviously Amazon's very quick, I'd highly recommend going there. So you can get it quick and you can do this quick. But the reason why tracking your scale weight is super important is linking back to what I was talking about earlier. We are going to have different requirements to grow based on the fact that we are our own individuals, right? So for example, someone who's 6'5" and weighs 140 kilos and is trying to gain weight, they are going to require a lot more calories than me, for example, who's 5'7" and currently weighs 73 kilos, right? So we need to actually understand what our weight is so we know how much we need to eat so we can keep gaining weight, okay? So that is step number three, your scale weight. And one more thing that I want to mention as well is when you're tracking this in the future, you want to step on the scale weight the first thing you do every single morning, right? The reason why you want to do this in the morning is because it is simply the most accurate time of the day to do so, because you've just woken up from a nap. Everything in your system, food, water, it's going to be digested and flushed out your system. Therefore, you're going to see your body weight in the purest, most accurate form without any other types of weight, as I said, just such as food and water, that can inaccurately portray your weight on the scale, okay? So they are the three things that you need to do right now, and you're going to do them right now if you actually want to make progress, because what happens a lot of the time is someone says they'll do something and then they just end up not doing it, right? So if you actually want to make progress, then you need to take this shit seriously, okay? So set a clear goal, right? Whether that's a certain strength feat, fill out a certain t-shirt, get to a certain body weight, attain a dream physique of yours, someone you see on the internet, for example, take your progress photos, you want to get that initial motivation, and obviously we need to see visual progress, it's very, very important, and track your scale weight, okay? They are the three things. Now let's move on to the juicy stuff. Okay, so by now you should have your scale weight, and if you do not, then please go and do it, because you cannot carry on this video without it. So the first pillar we are going to go into in, obviously how to bulk and gain muscle is diet, okay? Diet is super, super important towards muscle growth and bulking and gaining weight. And you could argue that any of these three pillars are the most important. However, I just want to reiterate the importance of diet like this. Okay, you've got to think about it like fuel to a car, right? If you got a petrol car, for example, you obviously need to fill it up with petrol so it can drive, right? Because otherwise, if it doesn't have petrol, then your car can't go anywhere, okay? And it's quite funny that I'm talking about my car not going anywhere, because my car just failed its MOT, so I have no more car at the moment. So, yeah, Without petrol, your car can't go anywhere. And it's the exact same thing with muscle gain and diet, right? The diet is like the fuel to your body. So the body is the car and the diet is the fuel. Without the fuel, the car can't go anywhere. Without the diet, you can't physically make progression. You can't physically train hard. You can't physically increase your strength, right? And obviously, if we want to gain weight, we need to make sure we are eating a lot. So diet is super, super important. The first thing that we need to identify is what we actually need to do with our diet so we can actually bulk and gain muscle. And if you didn't necessarily know already, in order to successfully bulk, you need to eat in what is called a calorie surplus, okay? A calorie surplus basically just refers to when one eats in excess to their normal daily amount that they would need to eat if they were to stay at the same weight. But because we want to gain weight, we just eat in a little bit more. We eat a tiny bit more, and those extra calories is what is going to help us gain weight, right? And it basically works like this. All of us as humans, we have what is called our maintenance calories. So, for example, in instance, let's say that my maintenance calories is 2,000 calories every day. And if you're not sure what this means, it basically means that I would need to eat 2,000 calories a day in order to stay at the same weight. So right now I weigh 73 kilos, and let's say, for example, my maintenance calories is 2,000. So if I was to eat 2,000 calories every day, I would stay at 73 kilo body weight, right? However, I want to bulk and gain muscle, so 2,000 calories isn't going to cut it. So what I would need to do then is increase that by around 250 to 500 calories, right? So I would then eat 2,250 to 2,500 calories in order to gain weight, right? And weight gain works on a calories in, calories out basis. So as I just said, we have our maintenance calories, and for instance, mine in this scenario is 2,000 calories, right? And the reason I would need to eat 2,000 calories in order to gain weight is because 2,000 calories also leaves my body naturally every day, right? So if 2,000 calories naturally leaves my body every day, then I would need to eat 2,000 calories in order to bring it up and balance it out. That is why it's called maintain, because if you eat at that amount, then you're going to eat the exact same in the amount that leaves. However, if we want to gain weight, we need to feed our body more than the amount that leaves our body. So we need to consume more calories every day than the amount that leaves our body, right? So if I were to eat 2,000 calories every day, that wouldn't be enough because that's the amount I burn. So if I were to eat 2,500 calories, then my body is going to consume 500 more calories than it burns. Therefore, our bodies have got to do something with that, right? Whether that's more energy towards the gym, that would basically just mean you'll gain weight, okay? So that is basically a calorie surplus in a really short description, and it's absolutely essential that we eat in one, okay? And in order to find out what your calorie surplus is, because as I said, a 6'5" dude who weighs 140 kilos will need to eat a shit ton more than me, who weighs only 72 kilos to gain weight, and that is kind of where I'm blessed by being short. I was mocked for being short all my life at 5'7", but this is where the money is now, okay? So in the description, probably the second link down below, or you'll find it, I've linked a calorie calculator for you. And this calorie calculator is going to basically show you things you need to fill in. So your age, your height, your weight, your activity level every week. And once you've filled this out, you want to press the calculate button. Now, once you've done that, it is going to come up with a load of numbers that don't mean shit to us, okay? It's going to come up with numbers that tell you how much you need to eat to lose weight and to maintain weight, but we do not want to do that because we want to gain weight, okay? So what you need to do is click where it says show info for weight gain, and then where it says 0.5 kilos a week, that is the amount of calories that you want to eat every day, right? So for example, you may put your details in and, it says you've got to eat 3,000 calories every day to gain 0.5 kilos a week. That is your calorie goal for now, okay? And I'll explain what I mean by for now in just in a little bit. But just know that, okay? Note that down, write that on a bit of paper because that is super, super important. So that is step 1 for a successful diet done. So now moving on to step 1.5, okay, and this is identifying how many meals you want to have every single day. So now you have a good idea of, obviously you have an idea of how many calories you need to be eating and that you are going to start eating, right? You want to sort of start to have an idea of how you want to split that up throughout the day. It's not optimal to consume 3,000 calories on one meal. Don't do that. That's a stupid way to bulk. So I would highly recommend that you have anywhere between 3 and 5 meals every day. Ideally, the more meals you have, the better, and that is because our body needs that constant nutritional replenishment throughout the day, and that will actually help muscle growth and recovery even further. However, a lot of us don't have time to eat like a bodybuilder and as frequently as a bodybuilder, so that's why I say anywhere from 3 to 5 meals a day is the best for us. And to be honest with you, as you're a beginner, the only thing that really matters at the moment is the fact that you get your calories in. So as I said, we are all individual, we all work better doing different things, so whatever you prefer, whatever times you feel like you can eat food best, and I'll get onto that in step 2, do that, okay? So before we move on, identify how many meals you want to eat every single day, and that I would recommend anywhere from 3 to 5, okay? So now moving on to step 2, and that is consistent meal timings, okay? We want to be eating at the similar or at the same times every single day, right? Because this is going to give us an absolutely massive advantage when it comes to bulking and staying consistent with our diet and actually making sure we eat the required amount. The reason why I say that is because us as humans, we have been a long day, a hormone called our ghrelin hormone. This ghrelin hormone is basically the hormone that stimulates our appetite. When it gets released in our body, it sends a signal to our brain to make us feel hungry. So essentially, when you feel hungry before dinner, for example, you smell some nice food down the road and you start to get hungry. That's just your ghrelin hormone doing its work in the body and sending a signal up here, okay? And what we want to do in order to basically just hack the system is make this hormone and our body internally start to recognize our dietary patterns and habits, so it actually starts to work in our favor. So what I mean by this is if we start to eat at the same times or the similar times, or as similar as we possibly can every day, then our body's going to start to pick up on these patterns, right? And then as a consequence, after a week of sort of adjusting your settings, let's say, your body's going to catch on to these patterns and it's going to be like, okay, so for the past week, I've been eating dinner at 5:30 p.m. So I'm gonna help me, and I'm gonna release. And the ghrelin's gonna release at 5 p.m. and then it's gonna send a signal to our brain. And just before we eat, we're gonna start to feel hungry, right? So it's essentially like we're controlling when we feel hungry, which is super important because obviously, if you haven't figured already, we do need to eat slightly more than we may be than we may thought we were physically capable of. Okay, so making sure you set yourself consistent meal timing can actually be a cheat code, and it can definitely be the difference between whether you actually be successful in this game or not, right? And another thing that this does as well is just it gives you that structure. And structure with muscle gain and weight gain is super important because of how consistent you have to be. And if you're just going with the flow and doing what you want on random days, eating at 10 a.m. on Monday for your breakfast and then eating at 7 a.m. on Tuesday, and you don't necessarily have rhythm, then you're going to feel really lost. And to just sort of give you sort of evidence that this happens, I went on a holiday with my family. I'm very grateful that I'm able to go on holiday with my family and that we're all well. I went on holiday with them all a couple of weeks ago, and I just sort of gave myself a little break. I was still training. I was still doing training in the gym, but very light sessions, very quick sessions, not on program. In terms of the buffet, I was just sort of refeeding, not really giving a shit about my diet. And then I got back and I felt very lost because I don't have a program, I don't have a schedule, and I don't have structure to my diet and my training. So what I've done is I've sat down, as soon as I got back from my holiday, I sort of evaluated, right, what do I want to do with myself in terms of my diet? Where do I want to be in the next 6 months and what do I want to achieve? That is the goal setting, right? And then I've taken my progress photos, I've taken my initial scale weight, and because I want to bulk, I've then figured out my surplus, right? And in relation to my surplus, I've then identified how many meals I want to eat a day, which is 4, right? And I've now made myself consistent meal times, right? So this routine thing, you kind of have to have it because otherwise it's really, really easy to go off track. And to give you, actually, I'll give you an example in point number 4 for diet. But yeah, just know that for now. And in order to identify your consistent meal timings, what you basically want to do is just look at what you do every single week. Look at your calendar, look at your schedule, look at when you're working or when you have meetings usually. And you sort of just want to pluck the gaps, right? You know, whenever you have a break at work or, you know, you have some free time, get a meal in, right? And then get that habit consistent, and then your body's going to catch up to it, and then it's going to be a lot easier to eat consistently and get your calories in. Okay, so make sure you are eating at the similar or at the same times every single day. So point number 3 that I want to go on to now links to what I was just talking about. So now we've got our surplus and we've identified how many meals you want to eat every day. In order to actually identify when you want to eat, this is going to help you. Okay, so I can already identify 2 meals for you, right? 2 meals off the bat straight away. You can do whatever you want with the other 2 meals. However, I'm telling you, you have to have these 2 meals, and these 2 meals are your pre and post workout meals. Okay, when we are in the gym, we want to make sure we are energized. We want to make sure we're fired up, we're full, and we're ready to push some fucking weights, and we're ready to work hard. Okay, when we're in the gym, we burn what is called calories, and calories can also be known as energy, right? And in order to give us energy, we need to consume energy, or as I just said, calories around our gym session optimally, right? I hate that word, but you know what I mean. We want to prime ourselves for the session as much as possible. We want to prime ourselves so we can put as much energy, blood, sweat, and tears into our session so we can train hard, therefore productive, right? So we need to make sure we are feeding our body that fuel so the car can drive 80 miles an hour for a long time. And in other words, we want to feed ourselves at you know, the right times, so we're primed for our gym sessions and we can push extremely hard for the whole entire thing. Okay, so you want to have a pre-workout meal and a post-workout meal. You want to have your pre-workout meal anywhere from 30 minutes at the absolute max to an hour and a half to 2 hours before your session. And you want to have your post-workout meal anywhere ideally from 5 minutes to an hour after your gym session. You know, you can just eat whenever you want after, really, but I think it's most optimal to eat as soon as possible after your gym session. Okay, obviously, in order to be consistent with those things, you want to also be consistent with when you go to the gym. So before you find your pre and post workout meal times, you know, to be consistent with meals throughout the day, I'd highly recommend having one time where you go to the gym, and the exact same principles of why you should eat at the same time every day apply to why you should train at the same time every day. Because once you start getting in this habit, it's going to take a little bit for your body to recognize these patterns. However, your body's going to be like, now I'm training at midday, so I'm going to acclimatize my body clock and I'm going to start to prime myself naturally for physical activity at midday, right? And it's also another mental thing. I know tomorrow morning at 9:30 that I'm going to go and absolutely destroy my legs. So I'm already mentally primed, and if I'm already mentally primed, then that's going to inevitably get me physically primed for an amazing session as well. Okay, so in order to identify your pre and post workout meal, make sure you set a good time to go to the gym, and make sure you set a time where you can keep it consistent, so you can physically and mentally prime yourself for the session, and so you can have consistent pre and post workout meals. So now moving on to point number 4 for diet, and that is implementation intentions with your meals. Okay, so all of this is designed to make bulking as easy and as simple and remove all the friction and resistance as much as possible. Okay, implementation intentions is a concept dubbed by psychologists that James Clear wrote about in his newsletter, which I thankfully clicked on because I learned about this amazing term that is so applicable to so much in the gym and life as well if you understand it. So implementation intentions basically covers the umbrella of identifying when, what, how you're basically going to do something in advance. So implementing your intentions basically just refers to planning something out in advance. Okay, and James Clear did this study, and he found out that people who implemented their intentions, so stated when they were going to do exercise, how they were going to do exercise and what exercise they were going to do in advance, they were 2 to 3 times more likely to stay consistent than the group of people that didn't implement their intentions, okay? So how you can apply this to yourself is sitting at your desk, and this is exactly what I do, right? At the end of my day for 10 to 15 minutes, I basically just sit down and I identify what I'm, when I'm going to eat my meals, when I'm going to train throughout the day, and all the other stuff I'm going to do throughout my day. I'll show you exactly how I do this. So, I basically have a sheet like this, which lays out every single half an hour of my day from when I wake up to when I go to bed. I don't know if the camera's focusing on it properly. There's a lot of shit on there, that probably won't make any sense to you, but it makes sense to me, and that's the most important thing. But, I've got, for example, when I wake up, what I'm going to do in the morning. And then down here at 10 a.m, I've written meal 1, and I've written exactly what my meal is going to be. So this morning I had a protein oat bowl with fruit, and on the side I also had Greek yogurt and fruit, right? And I obviously know what measurements I'm having and stuff. And then at 2 o'clock I have meal 2, where I had 4 eggs and 2 tins of tuna mixed in a bowl. Beautiful combo, by the way. It may sound disgusting, but it is a lovely combo. And then at 6 p.m, I've got meal 3, which is dinner, right? And meal 4, I've got at 8 o'clock, right? So I know exactly what I'm going to do in advance, which is going to mentally, therefore physically prime me, and my body's just going to basically clock onto this. And because I'm so consistent with these times every day, my body's already clocked onto this. So I think it's 5 p.m. right now, and I'm starting to feel a little bit hungry, and that's because it knows dinner at 6 p.m. is around the corner. All right. And the reason why I haven't pointed out any gym session on here is because it's my rest day. But every single time I go to the gym, I make sure I plan it out in advance and write down on there when I'm going to train. Okay, so that is point number 4. You want to implement your intentions by just planning in advance. When you're going to eat, when you're going to train, when you're going to sleep and wake up, right? It may seem a bit systemized. However, the more predictable you are with the things you do, and the more you know what you're going to do in advance, the better you're going to operate, right? And I really like to think about it, especially with diet, because this is about diet, like a phone battery, okay? So in order to eat in a calorie surplus, and in order to bulk successfully, and in order to eat the amount of calories we need to, I like to think of us, we have a 100% battery life with diet, right? And we have 3 different ways we can spend this battery, okay? The first way we can spend this battery is thinking and deciding what we want to eat. The second thing is actually making the meals itself, and the third thing is actually eating the meals, all right? Which one of these things do you think we would get a better return on investment on, by spending the most time on? Just think about it. So obviously thinking and deciding what we're going to eat, cooking the meals, or actually eating the meals, okay? What do you think we would get a better return on investment on? Obviously this one, eating meals. Spending as much time as we possibly can and putting as much time in our break towards eating meal. I'm not saying you've got to dedicate 24 hours a day to eating meals, but whenever you have a break and you plan to eat, make sure you have most of that time dedicated towards eating meals. And you want to think about it like this. If you spend 70% of your battery, actually, sorry, let me restart. If you spend 20% or 25% even of your battery on thinking about what you're going to eat and deciding, because you don't have a plan and you have absolutely no fucking idea what you're doing, right? If you spend 25% of your time, thinking about what you're going to eat and deciding, and then you spend another 60% of your time actually cooking the meals because you realise that it's going to take longer because you didn't plan it out in advance and you just picked an inefficient meal, then you've only got 15% to eat the meals, right? And by the time you get to 15% battery, your energy is going to be low, okay? And I like to think of the battery percentage currency as energy, right? So, 1 bit of percentage, 1% equals 1 bit of energy. And, the lower you get on the battery, obviously the lower the energy is going to be. And if you only spend 15 minutes eating and you spend the rest deciding on what you're going to do, then you're going to feel more friction, more resistance, more procrastination to eating food. And this is not what we want, because there are going to be times where you may get back from a long day, maybe 8 p.m, and you're going to get back and you'll be like, oh, I've got to get 1,000 more calories in, what do I do? And if you don't have a plan, and you have no idea what you're going to do. You spend 25% of your battery or your energy thinking and deciding what to eat, and then you realise that you've got to spend 70% or let's say an hour cooking this meal, and then by the time you would eat this meal, it'll be like 9:30, and by 8 p.m. you're already really tired. So the more time you spend thinking and making the meals, the less energy you're going to put towards actually eating. Therefore, you're going to feel more friction, resistance, procrastination. So, you know, the likelihood of you not eating in a calorie surplus is going to be very, very high. So what we want to do is make actually eating in a calorie surplus as easy as possible and remove all of the friction and the resistance and the procrastination by making it simple. And one of those ways to make things simple is to plan out what you're going to do in advance. Exactly when you're going to eat your meals and when you're going to train. Because that's going to, you know, you're going to dedicate more time to actually doing the thing than thinking about it because you've actually planned it out in advance, right? So that is step number 4, implementation intentions, okay? So step number 5, and the penultimate, actually not the penultimate thing, one of the last things that I want to talk about in terms of diet is the 85 to 15 rule, okay? So I'm a big advocate for a clean diet, you know, eating clean, and, you know, being clean with your activity, and I'll get onto that in a second, okay? The 85-15 rule will actually help you do that. So what I mean by this is 85% of the meals you eat, you are clean, and 15% of the meals you eat, you go slightly off plan, aka you have a cheat or junk meal, okay? And the reason why this is the only way you're going to build up sustainability with a clean diet in the long term is because of something called achieving through the opposite, okay? So this is a really powerful way to think, and I've talked about it in a few videos, and if you watch my things, you're probably fucking bored of me right now, but I'm just going to go on about it anyway, because it's important, okay? Achieving through its opposite basically just refers to when you're not sure what to do, think of the opposite, and that is how you do it, right? So if you're, for example, if you're not sure on how to be smart in AI technology, for example, and you want to learn AI technology, then the way to get smart is to actually act stupid so you are willing to learn. Because if you think you're smart in something, then you're not going to be willing to learn. However, if you position yourself as stupid in terms of AI, then you're going to be willing to learn and you're going to be more open to learn. Because if you already thought you were smart, then your ego is going to take over and you're going to think, yeah, I don't need to learn, I'm already clever. But if you think you're stupid, then you're going to be open to learning. And the more you learn, the smarter you're going to get. So, you know, thinking through its opposite. And in terms of the gym and in terms of diet, if you want to build up consistency with a clean diet and you're not too sure how to do that, then you do it through its opposite, right? And this is where the 15% comes in, okay? Because us humans have mental limits, right? Sticking to a clean diet 365 days a year, it is bloody tough and not many people can do it. And especially as a beginner, I can almost 100% guarantee you will not do that, right? Like vowing that you're going to eat clean every single day for a whole year from day one, it's like you being a balloon that's going to never stop being pumped and you're eventually going to burst. And when you burst, that is a sign that you're going to give into your cravings, right? Because if you vow that you're going to eat clean, then you're essentially restricting yourself from something. And humans have this weird tendency that the moment we become restricted of something, we desire it more, right? So if you actually keep junk and cheat and shit meals in your life from time to time, then that's going to help you be more driven and be more motivated to keep eating clean, right? So if you actually want to be consistent with a clean diet, you've also got to be inconsistent at times. And when you are in this inconsistent phase, that is going to help drive you and get you motivated again to go back to the consistent side, right? And then when that motivation and the cravings you have to eat junk food come, then you go back to the inconsistent side. You satisfy those cravings, put them aside for a little bit, and then you go back to eating clean, okay? This is how you build it up this is how you build up sustainability with a clean diet in the long term. So I would highly recommend 85% of your meals you eat clean and on plan, and 15% you eat whatever you want. Pizza, burger, chocolate, you have the freedom, my friend. You indulge in whatever you want to indulge in, okay? So that is the 5th point. Now, moving on to the penultimate thing that I want to talk about in relation to diet is supplements, okay? I want to talk on supplements because there is so much talk about them in the fitness industry nowadays. And the main reason why that is because there's so many people sponsored by supplement companies. And don't get me wrong, I shop from places like My Protein, DY Nutrition. I take supplements. However, I feel like beginners are really, really easily manipulated in a really bad way because, to be honest with you, if we break it down, you know, if we're being real here, you don't actually need a single supplement in your life to grow muscle. Because if you think about it, like thousands of years ago, or, you know, when bodybuilding started in the Bronze Era, probably around 100 years ago to this day, right? They didn't have supplements. What the fuck was a supplement back in the 1930s? And they still grew muscle. Obviously, not necessarily as optimally, but that's because they didn't have the knowledge, right? Not because they didn't have the supplements, okay? The thing that's going to grow muscle is you training hard and you eating well, right? Supplements basically just provide assistance to that, right? So, you know, you don't want to rely on supplements, but they're just there to basically add the cherry on top, if that makes sense, okay? So if we're being real and fully transparent, the only supplements I'll recommend to you, and the only supplements, the two supplements I've taken in my lifting career that has helped me gain 28 kilos is protein powder, mass gainer more specifically, and creatine. Okay, protein powder helps with the diet, and creatine helps with the training. So let me explain. So protein powder, obviously, it's in the name. It helps us increase our protein intake, and protein is the main nutrient we need that is going to help us increase our rate of recovery and inevitably help us grow more muscle, right? And the mass gainer more specifically because that has more calories in it, right? And we want to be eating as calorie dense as possible, meaning that we want to eat meals and we want to have shakes in this situation that are as little in volume as possible and as big in density. So basically they just, you know, the volume of the food is little, but the amount of calories that it consists of is a shit ton, right? Obviously we want to keep it healthy, but that's basically how we want to eat on the bulk. And this really helps because obviously, you know, a mass gainer, usually if you have 1 scoop of protein powder, a bit of milk, and you whack a banana in there, that's probably around 800 calories in a drink, right? And I know for most people, and probably for me as well, I'm a lot easier consuming liquid calories than food calories, right? Obviously, you still want to consume food calories, but as I said, liquid calories and this protein powder will assist you on top of that when things get hard, okay? So that is the first supplement I'd recommend. The second one is creatine, and creatine helps with our training, right? And creatine basically it really simply helps us get that last rep in the gym, right? You know, when we want to give up, when it gets painful, it just helps us push the extra mile, right? And that is what we need to grow. As famous people once say, and I think Tom Platt said this, I'll pop him on the screen if you don't know who he is, it's those last 5 reps that matter the most, right? All of the other reps don't necessarily matter. It's the last 5 reps that do, okay? So you've got to make sure you push yourself, and creatine will help you do this. Not only does it help you physically in the gym, but it helps you mentally and in your life as well. It is the most researched supplement in the world, and for good reason, right? It's been shown that it helps improve our brain function. So, you know, whenever you're doing work or you're trying to be present with your family, it will just help you get focused, right? It helps improve your focus. And there's many more health benefits that are coming out now. I was listening to a podcast the other day and someone said another thing I can't necessarily remember. But I think it was to do with the link between creatine and longevity. So, you know, a really famous Mr. Olympia champion, that man who wrote that book there, Dorian Yates, he says that everyone from their nan to their mum to their sister to their next door neighbour should be taking creatine because of the health benefits, right? Okay, so now moving on to the penultimate step to forming your diet plan and actually executing successfully is actually planning what foods you're going to eat, right? What meals you're going to eat. Remember what I was talking about with the battery percentage with diet, right? We want to spend as little time as possible thinking about what we're going to do, and that's sorted out with implementation intentions, you know, planning in advance. And the second thing that we don't want to do, and we want to keep as little as possible, is actually cooking the goddamn thing, all right? So this is where, you know, you've got to be effective with your meals, okay? So not only do you want to eat meals that are easy to consume, that are highly calorific and not very big in volume, because obviously we want to make things as easy as possible for ourselves, and that's another video, and I've talked about that on my YouTube channel. But we also want to make meals, we also want to have meals that are really easy to cook and to get ready and to get in front of us on the table, because the longer you spend thinking and deciding about doing the thing and actually making the meals, the more resistance and friction that's going to build up between you and actually eating. and the most important thing is eating. So we want to spend as much time eating as possible, okay? So we want to, basically just have a handful of meals that we like, that are effective, that are calorie dense, and that we don't get bored of, and that are really quick and easy to cook. And we just want to rotate those, right? So, basically just want to have like a few meals you rotate for every single meal. So, a few breakfast options, a few lunch options, a few pre-workout options, right? And you basically just want to rotate these based on how you're feeling. And obviously you want to plan in advance. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't want these meals to be longer than 25 minutes to 30 minutes to cook, because then you're just gonna, the resistance and the friction is going to build up, because you're realizing you've got to spend so long doing that, so it's going to be intimidating. It's like if I knew I had to spend an hour to cook all of my meals every day, I'm probably not going to bulk properly, because I'm going to feel so much resistance to doing that, because I don't want to spend 5 hours a day cooking if you've got to eat five meals, for example. So you want to keep these meals quick, snappy, and efficient, right? Chicken and rice. Rice takes probably 10 minutes to cook. Chicken probably 20 minutes to cook, right? Eggs on toast. That probably takes me around 7-8 minutes. Steak, beef, tuna. You want to eat all of these really simple, really accessible things that do not take long to cook. Pasta, right? And if you cheat with your 15%, get a takeaway, right? You want to make it as lean and as efficient as possible. And remember what I said at the start, we want to keep it simple, and we want to make things as easy for ourselves as possible. So we want to delegate as much time as we possibly can to actually doing the activities that matter. And in other words, in this situation, we want to put as much time dedicated towards eating food, not thinking or cooking it, eating it. Because to be honest with you, the only thing that is going to get you towards your dream physique is actually making sure you're eating food, right? So, the more simple we can make that, the easier we're going to make it to eat food, okay? And the final thing that I want to go on about in terms of diet is how to adjust if you're not gaining weight, okay? So we just discovered your calorie surplus, and we've got all of your meal times written out. We've got your meals. You've probably selected the handful of meals you want. You know about implementation intentions. You know when you're going to go to the gym, so you know your pre and post workout meals. That's absolutely fantastic. So now you've got to execute on this, okay? And there is actually one more thing that I'm going to go on after this. But I want to go over how to adjust based on your progress, okay? Because sometimes we may find that we're going to stay consistent with calories and we're not gaining weight, or we may be gaining too much weight, or we're gaining at the perfect rate, okay? So I'm going to basically dial down what to do for those three situations, okay? So you want to give it 2 weeks of being consistent before you consider any of this, okay? So one of the main reasons why people don't progress really is because they just don't adjust as they go, okay? They keep things the same. For example, if I'm 73 kilos right now, and I started my bulk yesterday as I'm filming this video. If when I get up to 76 kilos, I'm going to require more calories to keep gaining weight, okay? I don't want to keep it the same, because then I won't gain weight. If anything, I might lose weight, because that won't be enough for my heavier self, okay? So you've got to keep pushing it as you go, and you've got to keep increasing it as you go, okay? So if you've been consistent for 2 weeks and you've seen a 0.4, 0.5 kilo weight gain, then you want to keep going at those calories. You found your perfect calories, and you basically just want to keep going until the weight gain slows down, right? And this brings me on to what you need to do if your weight gain slows down. So if you find that you're eating a lot, or you're eating the amount you've just found and you're not gaining weight, then you want to increase your calories by at least 150 to 250 calories, okay? And you just want to keep doing that until you find the perfect formula, because you're not going to know straight away. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. You're going to have to learn about yourself as you go, and I'm going to get onto that point in a second, because it's really important to understand that. But if you're not gaining weight at 0.4 to 0.5 kilos a week, increase your calories by at least 150 to 200 calories, and you should be closer to the weight gain, all right? And if you're gaining too much weight now, so not gaining too little but too much, over 0.5, so around 0.6 to a kilo a week, or even more, right? Reduce your calories by 200, okay? And just obviously keep doing that until you find the perfect formula. And now we're actually moving on to the penultimate thing about diet. So the penultimate thing that I want to talk about is actually in terms of the execution, okay? So tracking your progress. Tracking is super, super important, because tracking our progress, so the essential things, so in terms of our diet, our calories, and our scale weight, it gives us what is called data, right? And data gives us feedback. And feedback is super important because it tells us what we need to do going forward to keep improving, right? So in order to, for example, if you're not gaining weight or if you're gaining too much weight, in order to actually know those things in the first place, you need to track, right? Because if you don't track your scale weight every day, then you're not going to know whether you've gained too much or too little, or you're gaining at a good rate, right? So they are the two things you need to track in terms of diet. So your daily caloric intake and your daily weight scale. The more consistent you keep your meals, the easier it's going to be to track your calories. And that is why I said you only want to pick a handful, right? It may sound boring, but if you pick meals that you enjoy and that you don't get bored of, it certainly will not be boring, my friend. I've been eating scrambled eggs on toast for years and I still love it, right? So you just want to pick meals that aren't boring, and then you want to track them, and then it'll be as easy as possible. Remember, we want to spend as little time doing this stuff so we can do the stuff that matters the most, which is the training and eating, right? So, just we want to make our machine as lean as possible. So the app I'd highly recommend to you guys is MyFitnessPal. It's really simple, really easy, really efficient to use. The food you consume, it probably will be on the database already. For example, if you have a banana from a really common supermarket, the calories on it will probably just be on the database anyway, so you can just search it in and add it. It's really easy, really simple. And if it's not, you can just weigh it out with a food weight scale, right? Really easy, really simple stuff. It will not take you long at all. And that is why I say you want to spend little time as possible cooking and thinking about what you need to eat, because there are a couple of things you need to do. If you need to weigh out chicken, for example, you want to just keep these things as quick as possible so you can spend as much time actually doing the thing that matters, which is eating, right? Now I've repeated myself so much in that sense, but the last thing you want to do is make sure you're tracking your calories. And one of the best ways to actually stay consistent with this is holding yourself accountable and finding a group of people to hold yourself accountable with. And that is where my community comes in. So I basically, beyond these YouTube videos, I have a free community where I help men just like you with weight gain, muscle gain. If they're struggling, I basically help them do that in the most efficient way possible. Me and all the other members in there are posting their diet and posting their calories and their progress and asking questions. So it is a beautiful environment to hold yourself accountable in and progress. Okay, so if you feel like you're going to go off track really easily and you need some accountability in your life, then I would highly recommend joining the free community. As I just said, it's completely free. It's going to be the top link in the description, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you in there and implementing all of these steps. Okay, but the final thing that I want to go on about in terms of diet links back to what I said earlier, right? We are individual. We are different. Therefore, different things are going to work for us in terms of muscle growth, which means the better you understand yourself as an individual, physically and psychologically, the better you are going to progress. The more you understand how you work, the more muscle you will grow. Okay, the better you understand yourself, that basically means the more muscle you're gonna put on. Okay, so to the extent you understand yourself and how you operate will determine how much muscle growth you'll put on. Right, whether you reach your maximal potential or not. But it basically just depends on how well you understand yourself. And don't get me wrong, these things take time, okay? Understanding what foods digest of you better, understanding how many meals a day works better for you in your digestion, understanding what training works good for you, it all takes time. I've been in this game for almost 5 years and I'm just starting to understand these things. But it's important that you know this earlier than I did, because you can start to pick up these patterns and actually be aware of them, okay, and aware that these things happen for a reason. If someone says that they like bench press better and that they've seen chest growth better with bench press, but you like incline dumbbell press better, then you can identify that that is you getting one step closer to understanding you right now and how you operate and what works for you, okay? So the better you understand yourself, the better the progress you'll make and the quicker it'll be, okay? So that is pillar number 1, and I know this is going to be a long fucking video, but if you take in all this information, then it is going to be insane, right? Your progression is going to be insane, okay? So that is pillar number 1. Let's move on to number 2, okay? So we have training, okay? Training is also just as important as diet. As I said, all of these pillars can be just as important as each other. The better we train, the better our muscle growth. So you actually need to understand how to train properly. And I'm going to walk you guys through 6-7 things that is going to help you understand training and what you can start to focus on. Okay, my microphone just died. All right, lovely stuff. Okay, so the first thing that I want to go over with you guys is that technique is king. Okay, technique is the single most important thing that is going to drive muscle growth. And one saying that I've just made up on the spot that I'm going to make thousands of people aware of when I get bigger in the future is, show me your technique in the gym and I will show you your maximal potential in the gym in terms of muscle growth, right? Show me your technique and I will show you your final form. And that basically means the better the technique and the better you perform exercises properly, the more muscle growth you're gonna you're gonna undergo. And the worse your technique, the less muscle growth you're gonna undergo. Okay, so understanding that technique is actually how we grow is super important, because obviously, as I said, we perform exercises to stimulate muscle growth. Okay, and the better we perform exercises, the better we can recruit our muscle fibers inside our muscles. Therefore, we can have a better mind to muscle connection, which means that we can stimulate our muscle to a more profound, deeper level at a better intensity. Therefore, that means we can grow muscle, because the better you can stimulate your muscles, the more you'll grow. So, it's all about the muscle stimulation, and how you stimulate the muscle and the quality you do that is based on whether you can perform an exercise well or not, right? And how profound you are with your form and with your technique, and how seriously you take it, and how much pride you put into it, okay? And how much attention to detail you put into your technique, okay? And if movements such as bench press or squat or deadlift or pec deck or lat pull downs or leg press, if they don't feel natural as a beginner, do not worry, because as I said, these things take time. The gym is a long-term game. It won't happen overnight, okay? As I've said in many videos, you've got to play a video game in accordance to how it's meant to be played, right? Fortnite, for example, you wouldn't just use random controls. You would use the control to shoot a gun, to kill someone. You wouldn't just press a random control. You'd use that one so you can get good at the game. And it's the exact same thing with a gym. The gym requires that you stay in this for the long run, so you've got to abide by those rules, okay? So in this situation, it's going to take you a long time to master technique. I'll give you 2 really good examples. So me personally, and with a lot of people, training your back muscles takes a long time to really click, right? And for me, it's probably taken me about 4 years up until the point where I've really started to click with my back training. And Mike Thurston, for example, a massive online figure. I was speaking to someone at my gym who spoke to him once at a gym meetup thing, and he was saying how it took him over 5 years to master his back training, right, and the technique and the mind muscle connection and recruiting the muscle fibers and stimulating the back properly, okay? So these things take time, but the earlier you realize this and the earlier you start to prioritize technique before anything else, before increasing the weight and, just going crazy, right, the better you're going to be. Remember, show me your technique and I will show you your maximal potential in the gym. The better your technique, the better your maximal potential, okay? So the first thing that you need to prioritize with your training before you think about increasing the weights, doing advanced shit, is making sure your technique is right. The second thing that I want to go over with you guys is that simplicity is queen. Alright, we got the king and the queen of the training. Alright, simplicity, as I said at the beginning of the video, this point really applies to everything in this video. The more simple and the more lean you keep things, the better off you're going to be, because you can then add on to what you're doing in the future to then progress more. Alright, so I want to put it in this example, right? So we got 2 people running 2 different businesses, actually the exact same business, right? So for example, as I said, I'm coaching people. I've got my free community down below. Let's say I've got me with my community right here, and you've got Jaden with his fitness community right here. Jaden has like 1,000 different videos in this community, and he has all this really complicated stuff, all these different spreadsheets, and me, I only have 1 course in my community with 3 videos that are really, really simple. I have a really neat laid out community that's really simple, really minimalistic. Who do you think is going to make more progression? Obviously me, right? Not being biased, I'm just saying in this situation, I would make more progress. And the reason why that is because I've got less. I've kept it simple so I can keep adding to make the community better. However, because Jaden's got so much in his community, if he wants to make it better, he's probably going to have to take stuff away. So that's the difference. You don't want to be taking things away from your training. You want to be adding onto your training to make things better. Okay? So sticking to one training program, sticking to really basic and simple exercises, not overcomplicating any form, right? Absolutely pivotal. Okay, number 3 for effective training so you can bulk and gain muscle is acknowledging that progressive overload is the prince of the training royal family. Okay, progressive overload is a concept that basically just refers to when one increases the difficulty of what they do in the gym, which basically forces muscle growth. Okay, and in this situation I would highly recommend that you use progressive overload in terms of the weight you use and the reps you do. Okay, so let's start with the reps. All right, so on your workout program, which I'm going to go over in a few minutes, you should have rep ranges for each of your exercises. Rep ranges basically just give you that guiding light of how many reps you should aim for on a set on an exercise. So for example, let's take bench press and you follow a program that has a 6 to 8 rep range, okay? That means that you've got to aim to use a weight and to get anywhere from 6 to 8 reps, okay? And basically every single week you just want to try and get one more rep than last week. So if you got 6 reps with 60 kilos on bench press one week, then you want to aim to get 7 and then 8, right? And then this is where the increase in the weight comes in. So once you get 8 reps, what you want to do is increase the weight to the next weight up. So if you get 60 kilos for 8 reps on bench press, then you know you've hit your limit and you can now increase the weight. You're now qualified to increase the weight. So what you do is you reset and you increase the weight to the next one. So 62.5 kilos, and now you try and aim for 6 reps again, or just get as many as you can. And the likelihood of you getting 6 reps is going to be higher because you increase the weight. And you basically just want to keep working through the rep range with the weight, and then when you get to the top of it or beyond it, you just want to increase it, and then that is going to set you back to the start of the rep range. Okay, and you want to keep doing that, and that is how you're going to progressive overload. Pair that with good technique, then you are going to explode in size, okay? Because that is how you truly grow muscle in the gym. Progressive overload and performing an exercise right. You will literally force your muscles to grow. They'll have no other choice, right? And that's exactly what we want to do, okay? Okay, so the next thing that I want to go over with you guys is basically just identifying your training program, okay? So what we want to do is we want to identify a training program where we know exactly what workouts we're going to do, exactly what exercises we're going to do, and exactly how many sets and reps we're going to do of those exercises, okay? And that may sound a little complicated, but do not worry, I have got you, okay? So as a beginner, I would highly recommend you go to the gym anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week, right? Any of those will be effective for muscle growth, especially as a beginner, because as a beginner, you'll make so much progress because your body is not used to it, so it's just going to react to the resistance training like crazy, and your muscles will have no choice to grow. Whether you perform technique right or not, whether you use the right weights or not, if you just simply go to the gym consistently at the start, you will grow muscle, right? It's as simple as that. But obviously we want to be as effective as possible. So we want to stick to one workout program, sets of exercises, and we just want to be as consistent as possible, okay? So as I said, to get a good workout program for a beginner, I'd recommend going to the gym anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week. I would recommend following one of these 2 splits, push-pull legs and upper-lower. And if you don't know what they are, push-pull legs basically just consists of, on push day, you do chest, triceps and shoulders. And that is because when you train chest, you push the weight in order to activate it. To train shoulders, you push the weight in order to activate the shoulders, and in order to train the triceps, you push the weight in order to activate them. And on pull day, you do back and biceps. The reason why it's called pull day is because you pull the weight to activate your back, and you pull the weight up to activate the biceps. And leg day is pretty simple. It's called leg day because you train the muscles in your legs. The upper lower split is basically you just train your upper body on upper day, so all the muscles in your upper body, so chest, arms, shoulders, back, all of that jazz. And then on lower day, you just train all the muscles in your lower body. Really simple, really easy to follow. And that is exactly why I'd recommend those 2 workout programs for you. As I said, you don't want to overcomplicate these things. The simpler you keep things, the better off you're going to be, because then the more you can add and the more you can do and the more room you have to do more things in the future. And then you want to pick the workout program you want to commit to, right? Obviously, you're not locking it in for life. You know, you're not going to be pressured to do the whole thing for life. You're not going to have a gun to your head to stick to it once you choose one. If you are not sure on a workout program, I actually have a free push-pull legs program in my free community. I'm going to leave it in the top link in the description down below. And I'm also going to leave templates for push-pull leg and upper-lower splits. You know, if you don't want to join my community, then obviously it's not your loss. You can do what you want. You know, I'm not going to put a fucking gun to your head. But, you know, if you don't want to join, you don't want to get access to that workout program, that's fine. I'll just leave templates for you so you can sort of see what they would look like and what exercises and how many exercises you want to do for each muscle. Okay, so the penultimate thing I want to talk about in terms of training is tracking. Okay, once again, like the diet, we need to make sure we know what we're doing in the gym so we can gather data to get feedback so we can know what we need to do in order to improve, right? If something's not working, then we have the data to identify that, and then we can form feedback for ourselves and make changes so we can avoid plateaus and get over these hurdles and obstacles and bottlenecks we will inevitably face, right? Because when someone tries to do something that involves growth, we are going to have to overcome obstacles. It's all part of the process, right? If we log our workouts, so you know, you log how many reps you do on a certain set of bench press, for example, then that's going to help you overcome those hurdles and obstacles a lot better and a lot quicker and a lot easier. And there are two different ways you can log your workouts, okay? So the first one is digitally. So, you know, you can make a Google Sheet, or you can make a Google document, or you can do it on your Apple Notes, and you can make a table, and you basically just write in how many reps you got on bench press after you did the set whilst you're resting. Or you can do it how I do it, which is tangibly, so, you know, physically, right? You have a physical book. I have a logbook that's specifically designed to log your training workouts, which is pretty cool. You can get them on Amazon. I got mine on Amazon. It literally cost me like $10. 10 quid, you know, I'm British, I don't know what I'm saying, bucks, Jesus. But, you know, it's got to be done, right? You need to know what you're doing and if you're progressing or not, and if you're actually pushing yourself hard enough. Because, you know, it's easy to say, like, oh, I'm not progressing because of this, but if you don't necessarily track, then you may change the wrong thing. You know, you may assume that it's your diet that's wrong, but in reality, you're not pushing yourself hard enough, right? So it's really important that we know what we're actually doing. So in order to stay consistent with these things, there are a few things that I want to go over, okay? The first thing is implementation intentions. So as I said earlier, this is really applicable with anything in life, to be honest with you. Implementation intentions in terms of logging your session more consists of visualization, right? So, you know, for example, as I said earlier, I'm already prepared mentally and primed mentally to do a set of Smith machine squats on my leg day tomorrow, right? And I'm already visualizing me writing down in my notebook that I've got a PB, right? These visualization things really help you manifest what you want to do, right? So that's one thing that's going to help you with consistency. And in terms of training in general, you know, the whole shebang, implementation intentions, as I said earlier, just write it down on your plan. You know, spend 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the day writing when you're going to eat, when you're going to have your pre-workout meal, and when you're going to go to the gym, right? And in order to prepare for your session, I would highly recommend that you have a 5-minute little think and reflection to yourself before you go to the gym, and you run through in your head quickly what exercises you want to do, what weights you want to hit, how many reps you want to get, because that's just another thing that's going to psychologically prime you, therefore it's going to physically prime you as well, which is super important for having a good training session, okay? The second thing that I want to go over is environment, okay? Environment is something that's really important and that I didn't necessarily consider for a while, but since I have considered it and started to manipulate and curate my own environment, my own success environment, things have just gone like that, right? So your environment basically refers to every single thing around you, right? My phone, my laptop behind the screen, my bedroom wall right there, the books there, my family downstairs, the foods I eat, the friends I see, the buildings I'm looking at outside my window, right? It's all my environment, okay? And us as humans, we are a byproduct of our environment. And if you're not too sure what that means, It basically just means that whatever you focus on and whatever you surround yourself with, you will form a part of you, and you will form yourself in accordance to that and in alignment with what you surround yourself with. So there is a really well-renowned saying that you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So if you surround yourself with 5 people that are smoking, doing drugs all the time, doing, drinking alcohol, going to parties, not necessarily focusing on themselves, then the likelihood of you going down on that path as well is going to be higher, because that is your environment. We are a product of our own environment, okay? However, if you surround yourself with 5 people that go to the gym, they have their own business, or they're getting a really good job, they meditate, they have all these really good habits, and they encourage the same on you, the chance of you becoming that is going to be a lot higher, and the chances of that rubbing off on you is going to be a lot higher, right? So we are byproducts of our environment, and we need to make sure we optimize our environment so we can do this to the best we possibly can, right? So as I said earlier, we want to plan in advance, so we spend as little time thinking about what we're doing and cooking, for example, with diet, so we can spend as much time eating as possible, right? That is us curating our environment, right? We want to make sure foods are really easily accessible, right? We don't want to get home at 8 and realise we got no food in the fridge, and then we got to go back out to the shop, because you're probably not going to feel motivated to do that, and that is where the progress is lost, okay? So we want to make sure that food is really easily accessible, we're hanging around with good people, we're looking up to good people. We've got good teachers, we're making sure we're learning from the right people who have their mindset in check, right? All of this stuff is really important, right? And I really want to just drive this point home in terms of the fact that your favourite sport, right? For example, growing up, I've always loved football, and because I'm English, that means soccer for you Americans. You've got to call it football nowadays. Come on, man, what are you doing? But anyways, football, right? I've always grown up loving football, and because I've grown up loving football, when I had an Instagram page, I followed all of these football accounts. I went to football matches. I hung around with people who liked football. I played football with those people. Therefore, I curated my environment, and I became a byproduct of football, and it became a part of my identity, right? And it's the exact same thing with a gym. I hang around with people who love bodybuilding. I watch YouTube on bodybuilding. I read bodybuilding books. I have people up on the wall. Arnold Schwarzenegger is right there, right? Because I've curated my environment around the gym, it's a lot easier for me to take the actions, because that means that I'm increasing my knowledge on it. Therefore, I'm going to be more motivated. Therefore, I'm going to do things easier and more efficiently. So in order to create a good environment, it has to be in alignment with your goal, right? So if you want to bulk and gain muscle, make sure you have calorie dense food in the fridge. Make sure it's easily accessible. Make sure you can get to your gym easily, right? Or if you can't, then just do whatever you can, right? Read books, watch TV related to that, hang around people that do the same thing, right? And this brings me on to the final thing: accountability. Just as I said in the beginning or in the middle of the video, making sure that you have a community and like-minded people that give you that external responsibility to carry out the actions is super important, and that is why I'd highly recommend you join the free community down below, which is going to help you hold yourself accountable, surround yourself with people who are on the same track as you, and ultimately want the same things as you, if not more, right? So if you really want to do this, then making sure you have that accountability there is really important, because sometimes we're not necessarily internally as driven to the point where we do things when we don't necessarily feel like it. For example, if you train on your own and you don't feel like doing a leg day, the chance of you showing up for that leg day are going to be really small, compared to if you had a training partner and he said, be there at 7:30 in the morning, I don't give a shit how you feel, we're training legs and I'm pushing you till you're sick, then you are probably going to show up, right? So that is basically pillar 2, training, okay? So this video is dragging on, and it's good that this point is going to be really short. So the final pillar, number 3, to success in the gym is recovery, okay? So many people underestimate the importance of recovery in the gym, and it really, really annoys me, because, as I said, any of these pillars can be considered as the most important, and they are just as important as each other. And the reason why recovery is important in terms of the gym and in terms of progression is because, when we recover, that's when our muscles grow. And once again, back to that phone battery example, right? When we're in the gym, we have 100% battery, and then we drain all of our battery, aka energy, into the gym to the point where we get down to 5%. You know, for example, if we train back and biceps, they started off with 100%, and then by the time we left the gym, they should be on around 5%, right? And with any phone, if you want to actually use it, you've got to recharge it if it gets to that low battery, or it's going to die and you're never going to use it again. And it's the exact same thing with muscle growth. Muscle growth operates on a battery sort of scheme, right? We train hard, aka use our battery in the gym, and therefore we got to recharge it again. And in order to recharge our muscle battery, we need to take time to recover, right? And you know, we do all the damage in the gym. You know, we progressive overload, we train intense, we prioritize technique, we stimulate our muscles properly. Therefore, we are literally giving our muscles no choice to grow bigger and better faster, right? So that is the importance of recovery. And there are three main things that I'm going to go on about now that that you need to prioritize when recovering. Okay, so the first one is diet, right? You know, I covered it in pillar one, so you should know all about it. But because you're not going to the gym, that doesn't mean that you have an excuse to not follow your diet and not eat in a calorie surplus. Okay, as I said, the energy gets drained in the gym and we need to recharge it. Making sure that you prioritize your diet is like buying a fast charger for your phone, right? Because your body needs nutrients. Your body needs the protein, it needs the carbohydrates, you know, it needs to replenish its stores in the muscle. Therefore, you know, it just sort of acts like a fast charger, and it'll increase your speed of recovery. So yeah, that's basically that's basically one of the first ways to recover. The second thing is sleep, right? If you think about it like this, we need sleep to survive, because the most extreme thing that can happen if a human just decided to stop sleeping if they're mentally insane is death, right? If someone stopped sleeping, they would eventually keel over and die, because sleep is essential to human life and bodily function and daily survival, right? And if we flip that on its other side, the better the quality of our sleep, the better the quality everything we do in our life will be, right? So the better we sleep, the better our mental health, the better our physical health, the better we're going to feel. And also, sleep helps us improve our digestive system and its health, and it helps our hormones be fired at good rates, right? So inevitably, it's going to help us recover. So there are three things I'd recommend you do to start off with to improve your sleep. So obviously you want to get anywhere from 7 to 9 hours a night. You want to be sleeping at the same times every day so we can regulate our circadian rhythm, which is going to help us do the things we want to do at the same times every day. Because if you're going to bed at 9 a.m. one night and at 3 a.m. one night, you're probably going to eat your meals at different times based on when you wake up differently, right? So you want to go to bed at the same times, ensuring that you get enough sleep and ensuring everything you do in a day is good and consistent as it can possibly be, okay? So in order to improve your sleep, there are three things that I want you to start off doing, okay? The first thing is not eating or drinking any food or water at least an hour before you go to bed. Now, it is recommended by doctors that you do it 2 to 3 hours at least. You know, you cut all ties with food and drink 2 to 3 hours before you plan to go to bed. However, because we're bulking and because we might have to get our calories in a little bit late if we're busy, then I say 1 hour at the absolute max is the cutoff point, okay? So if you go to bed at 10 a.m, then stop eating or drinking at 9 p.m. at the absolute max, okay? The second thing that I want you to do that's going to help you drastically improve your sleep is reduce the light and the noise in your room as much as possible, right? 1 second. So I have this trusty thing on my head, which is an eye mask, and when I put it on, I can't see anything. It is daylight right now, as you can probably see. You know, the sunlight is shining on me, but I can't see anything. And this is exactly how you want to sleep, because although you may be thinking, Ryan, if your eyes are closed, why on earth would light affect, you know, your sleep if your eyes are closed? Well, it does have an effect. You know, even the slightest bit of light. For example, you know, that bit on my screen, you know, it's ridiculously tiny, but it can still have an effect, right?
So you just want to minimize the amount of light in your room as possible, and the noise as well, okay? Because, you know, it's like, you know, if you're sleeping with your phone on or something, like, if you have your phone on not silent and someone calls you in the middle of the night, it's going to wake you up. And, you know, it's just going to reduce the quality of your sleep. I don't necessarily know the science behind both of those things, but I know that for a fact. I have this thing called an Oura-ring. It tracks my sleep. I track my sleep data every day, and I've been doing that since January. So I'm starting to get familiar with the things that help me sleep better and the things that don't help me sleep better, and making sure that I don't have any light and that I don't have any noise in my room has helped my sleep score go up a lot. Okay. The final thing that I'd highly recommend you do for sleep is be clean. Right, that consists of having a shower before you go to bed and having a having clean sheets. Right, that's it. I had to look over because I had to remember what I was saying. So every single week you want to change your bed, because you don't want to be in a bed with crumbs or, you know, stinky bed sheets. It's not very hygienic, and, you know, it's not necessarily going to help you. You know, if you change your bed sheets every week, you're going to sleep a lot better. You know, when you change your bed sheet every now and then the first night it's like you're sleeping on cloud 9, you want to have that all the time. You want to have that every week. So change your bed sheets every week and make sure you have a cold shower before you get into bed. The cold shower is going to help you basically just reduce any inflammation. So, you know, if you come back from the gym late, and you need to get ready for bed, or if you come back from a stressful day at work late, the cold shower is basically just going to help reduce any inflammation anywhere on your body, right? You know, probably even in your mind. I don't know, but, you know, it probably will. And it will just cleanse you, right? It will get all of that stress off you, right? You got to think about it like that. And it will just make you get ready for bed a lot easier. So that's sleep. The final thing is hydration, okay? Making sure you keep yourself hydrated is going to help you recover so much quicker, okay? Because if you think about it, what is water, if we're talking in terms of science? The equation for water is H2O. Okay, what is O? Oxygen. All right. What is deprived? What is our body deprived of after we finish a workout? Oxygen. If we stay hydrated, then we give our body oxygen. Therefore, our body can, you know, get rid of the waste products that built up during the workouts better and quicker, so it can help us recover more. And for men, it's recommended that you drink 3.7 litres of water every day. And in order to help you do this, I would recommend having at least a pint of water with every single meal, and B, obviously taking a water bottle to the gym. Super important you keep yourself hydrated during your sessions. And the most important one is, as soon as you wake up, have a pint of water. Not only will this help keep you hydrated, but it will help you get primed for the day so much quicker. Do you ever wake up to an alarm and you feel like, oh fuck, you know, that first 10 minutes of the day is really, really hard to get up, and it's absolutely brutal. If you go downstairs or, you know, go to your kitchen, drink a pint of water straight away, it will immediately snap your body out of that state and wake you up and get you ready for the day, right? So this is a really long video, it's dragging on. And that is basically all the points I wanted to make. So if you have made it this far, then thank you very much. It just really shows that you're eager and that you're determined and that you're ready to make the fucking change for real. If you follow all of these steps and apply everything in this video, then you will make it, just like I have made this transformation here. And if you want further help beyond these YouTube videos, you want more advice like this YouTube video, you want to get on a call with me, you want to get that free workout program, you want to hold yourself accountable with a community of driven men in the same situation as you, and I do not want you to miss out, and I want to see you transform your fucking life. Alright, see you next time.